So changes on and off the field for the Kilkenny hurlers ahead of the 2021 season. To discuss this and more, delighted to be joined on the line by former GAA President Nickey Brennan. And Nickey, great to have you on the show. I suppose Brian Cody has lost a couple of big hitters in recent weeks. We'll talk first of all about cornerback Paul Murphy, who retired with 4 All-Irelands and 4 All-Stars. Did he give absolutely everything to the Kilkenny cause?
Yeah, very much so, Tomas. And first of all, thanks for having me on your programme. I think Kilkenny have lost a good guy there in Paul Murphy, but it was probably pretty inevitable. I mean, Paul has obviously his whole career has taken on a new turn with his elevation to officership in the Irish Army. He's very highly regarded in the Army, and I suppose this was coming at a time when possibly his end days with Kilkenny were coming on board as well. He came back from the Lebanon in 2020. I suppose, and would not have probably been expected maybe to be part of the Kilkenny scene at all, as it turns out. But with the way the year went, he managed to get back onto the panel, and I suppose some of us might have been a little surprised he didn't get some game time. But given the way matters turned out and the loss to Waterford, it probably was an appropriate time for Paul to step aside and focus on his club and I suppose on his career in the Army. But a great guy, great leader, great disciplinarian, great attitude, very respectful of authority as you would expect given his professional background, and he brought an awful lot to that Kilkenny defence, and hence the success that he had as a successful cornerback, All-Ireland medal winner, and of course All-Star.
And another great leader, Nickey, at the other end of the field, Colin Fennelly, has chosen to take a year out for 2021. How much of a blow is that to Kilkenny, do you think?
Sure, it is a blow because, at 31, taking a year out seems strange, to be honest about it. And look, it didn't quite go for Colin maybe as well as he would have liked in the when he was captain of the team at the back end of the year. He had a couple of indifferent performances, which would normally be his form. He has been a pretty consistent performer, a real goal getter, and very much part of the Kilkenny attack there, along with TJ Reid. So going away from the scene is a real problem. There's no point in saying otherwise, because we happen to, that type of experience is invaluable for a team like Kilkenny, and his absence, even if it's only for a year, is going to be big. And it's not that easy to take a year out, in my view, at 31, and you can come back again at 32. I think that's going to be challenging. But we'll let 2022 look after itself. For 2021, he won't be there. He'll still focus with the Shamrocks Ballyhale, of course, as soon as club action commences, and it'll be very clear at that stage if Colin is still very much in the limelight to come back to Kilkenny, depending on how he gets on with the Shamrocks Ballyhale, which I expect he will still be a key man for them.
And I suppose 2020 didn't finish as Kilkenny would have liked, Nickey, like going from 9 points up against Waterford to losing by 4. How would you sum up the year for Kilkenny?
Well, I suppose it was in many respects, I suppose, getting to an All-Ireland semi-final in the circumstances wasn't a bad achievement, and winning the Leinster final was a very good achievement. But I suppose if we look back on the actual games, the game against Dublin was actually played on Halloween evening, and you were in Croke Park at the Kilkenny Waterford game, so you know what it was like being there in the empty stadium. It was surreal that evening against Dublin, because the dark sky outside, the fireworks going off in Dublin, and you hearing them, and the way the whole sky illuminated, and Kilkenny in the first half were fantastic. They could do nothing wrong. But by the time the game went to the final whistle, Kilkenny were hanging on by a thread, and it took just 2 late points there from Hugh Lawler coming up from the backs, and Alan Murphy to get them over the line. They were really grasping that day, and so look at it. They went into the Galway match, I suppose, underdogs, and played very well. And it did take a stroke of genius from Richie Hogan to win that game. And even though Galway came back, Kenny hung in there. So I thought after that match the thing had settled in that, and it did look that way against Waterford up to half time. Basically, and you were there, and we were chatting inside having a cup of tea at half time, and we were wondering, was there any way back from Waterford here? And as events turned out, there very much was. Kilkenny were blown out of it in the second half, and there was only one team in it. And I suppose that left everyone pretty dejected on the Kilkenny side, that the team would collapse again in the second half as it did against Dublin, and it posed question marks over the team. So, while it wasn't a bad year given the type of competition and the timeline that it was to get to an All-Ireland semi-final, Kilkenny are not they're not good losers when it comes to things like that. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean they would have been hoping to overcome Waterford. I suppose from my own personal point of view, after that, the real disappointment, I suppose, was that Waterford couldn't just jump the hurdle the next day again, and they were beating themselves.
Yeah, and I suppose Brian Cody doesn't like losing All-Ireland semi-finals. Nickey, it's not a feeling he's used to. He's signed up again for a 23rd season in charge, and I suppose this might seem a strange question for a man that's won 11 All-Irelands and 16 Leinster titles, but is he still the right man to lead this Kilkenny team in your view?
Well, I think, first of all, given the short turnaround, I think it was inevitable that the group were going to stay together. We all kind of reckoned that DJ Carey probably was not going to be part of it. Those of us who have been watching the action pretty close. And I should say, by the way, Conor Phelan is a good addition. You would know Conor down in Waterford for his involvement with WIT there, and a very, very good guy. So I think he's a very good addition. But as regards any change of management, that was never realistic given the short turnaround, because no sooner had Kilkenny finished up against Waterford that the players got a couple of weeks and they were back in getting their programmes then to prepare for the new year, albeit programmes in a different environment with COVID still around the place. So that was never going to change. I mean, it'd be a brave man will forecast when Brian Cody will give up. So there was never a prospect it was going to change for 2021. But obviously the spotlight now will fall on performances in 2021 without Colin Fennelly, without Paul Murphy, without Jerry Aylward, and quite a number of new lads on the scene now. Quite a lot of them are part of the extended panel anyway, the names that have come on now at this stage. So there's a lot of younger players that haven't tasted a lot of success. A few of them got obviously Leinster medals there back in November, but other than that, they've tasted very little success at senior level. So it's a very different year coming up now for Kilkenny and for Brian Cody to work on these young players to see what he can make out of them.
Yeah, do you still think that he has the raw materials, Nickey, to get Kilkenny competing again for major honours in 2021?
Well, I think we would have said here, and many of the time we discussed it on our own radio shows, that the last All-Ireland Kilkenny won at under 2021 was in 2008. Now we've got to 4 All-Ireland. We've won 4 All-Irelands since the turn of the century, and we've lost 4 at under 20 level. But 2008 is an awful long time to have gone back to before we won. On the minor scene, it's a bit better. We've won 5 in this since the turn of the century, and the 2014 was the last one. So it is, and we've lost 4 in the same period. So it is a long time for Kilkenny, and while winning under minor and under 2021 doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a successful senior team, at the same time it creates a pool of talent that certainly goes a long way towards helping you. The other thing in Kilkenny teams in the past too, Tomas, and I know I'm going back a little bit of time now, but there was always a case of the Kilkenny intermediate and junior clubs were able to give players to the senior squad, and a lot of them came from the Kilkenny intermediate team as well that was playing. Now that competition is gone, and it was a route that many players were able to take and be playing some competitive matches and at least put yourself in the spotlight. Now, if you take the current Kilkenny panel, that we think there's about 37 players on it. Now, of those, 28 of them are from senior clubs, 8 from intermediate clubs, and 1 from a junior club. And so there's no doubt about it that Kilkenny is to a large degree depending still on the mainstream of its players to come from the senior clubs in Kilkenny. And I think that's a pity, because I think myself that there's a lot of players at intermediate and junior level that have potential if they could only get into the right environment. And the loss of the inter-county intermediate from that point of view, I think that's been felt in Kilkenny because it was a great pathway to the senior side. So lack of underage success and the fact that the intermediate grade is gone, I think are difficulties that are part of the reason why Kilkenny maybe don't have the amount of players maybe available that they might have had in the past. But then we should say that really at the height of Brian Cody's career, he had exceptional hurlers that just are simply not the same quality all over the team. Now, that's just reality. We were blessed with what appeared during a main part of Cody's time with Kilkenny.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's hard to emulate the great players that he had with those teams, Nickey. And I suppose looking ahead to 2021, I suppose there's a lot of uncertainty about the new season. Michael Duignan was on this show last week saying that maybe the league shouldn't go ahead. He's very concerned with the COVID numbers and also with the financial burden it could place on county boards. What are your thoughts on it at the moment?
Well, I think, first of all, county boards will probably have to work on the basis that there isn't going to be any funding coming from Croke Park to support a National League programme, because that is the case. There isn't money. They're already forecasting a loss of around 17 million. And quite honestly, it could be more. There is no guarantee that there's any exchequer funding coming to the GAA to support the association. So there's every possibility that counties will have to say, if you're going to play in the National League, it'll be on the basis that you will cover your own costs and there will be no income coming through to you for them, bar perhaps a small portion from the TV rights attached to the National League. So I think there has to be a big question mark over the National League coming up. Now that's going to be problematic for some. Well, Kilkenny say in particular, where there's a lot of new players trying to break in. And I would have imagined Brian would have been using the National League, and it's probably the same as plenty of other counties as well, to be fair. They'll be using the National League to give new players an opportunity maybe to fill in spots maybe that perhaps they felt at the back end of the year weren't going as well as they should have had. So if there's no National League, you're going to see teams going into the championship in whenever that takes place in May, June, July time when it's planned for. And what level of preparation will they have done? They'll have very few practice matches, maybe will be a possibility. But at least the National League was good from that point of view. So with big doubts about the National League at this stage, I'd say at best it could very well be Patrick's Day by the time the National League will take place. That's going to mean a crammed competition. It's going to mean that club competitions are going to have to give up a couple of weeks, and that's going to cause other challenges at the bottom end of the year. So look at it. We can't blame anybody. The times we're in are the times we're in, but I do think we'd love to see National League matches taking place as soon as is possible with COVID in mind and with all the different restraints that one has to have in that particular scenario. It'd be great to have it back, but there is doubts about it.
Yeah, look, definitely it would be great to have it back, Nickey. And I suppose just a final point, it was great to see you out and about in Welsh Park and Croke Park last year. You're doing a lot of work with Community Radio Kilkenny at the moment, and I'm sure you're enjoying that. Like a lot of our listeners would have heard that you were struck down by COVID-19 last summer, but you're back hale and hearty again.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was in big bother about last April, Tomas. Yeah, it did. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was in bad shape for a while. But look, I worked once I kind of got back from it and tried to get back out and about and get back your physical shape and all that. Yeah, it was great to be able to get out and cover all the. We covered all the Kilkenny club matches at all levels and underage last year. We really went through a very busy schedule, and we got a great reaction because obviously people couldn't go to matches, and while some games were streamed live, and obviously in fairness to KCLR, the commercial local station, they also covered games. They were doing broadcasting, but we were reporting on every match because we had a volunteer pool of nearly 30 people out there covering games for us, and we were able to bring the sort of updates on games that mightn't have been possible otherwise, and that got a good reaction. And obviously then being able to go to the games, again they were on TV I suppose, so maybe our input there was not as huge, but we were part of the scene, and we were certainly able to gather lots of interviews and play them afterwards that wouldn't have been heard in other areas. So great to be out, and we're looking forward to doing it as soon as is possible again, and be off at the same grounds as yourself and Kieran O'Connor and people like that are at.
Well, Nickey, great to hear you in such good spirits. An absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, Tomas, and regards to everybody down in WLR. Thank you.
Lorne na Porca with Tomas McCarthy on WLR.
And there are 5 new faces on the Waterford hurling panel for 2021. Shane Bennett, Ballysaggart, DJ Foran, Portlaw, Seamus Keating, Ardmore, Michael Kiley, Abbeyside, and Thomas Douglas, De La Salle have all been called up by manager Liam Cahill. Defender Dara Fives has been released from the squad, while Páirce Mahoney and Tadhg de Búrca are recovering from cruciate knee ligament injuries. And as I'm sure you know by now, Waterford have received 10 All-Star hurling nominations. Stephen O'Keefe, Shane McNulty, Conor Prunty, Caleb Lyons, Tadhg de Búrca, Jamie Byrne, Austin Gleeson, Stephen Bennett, Desi Hutchinson and Jack Fagan are all in contention for next month's awards. Dacia top scorer Stephen Bennett is shortlisted for Hurler of the Year, alongside Limerick's Garrod Hegarty and Clare talisman Tony Kelly. Lismore defender Irla Daly is nominated for Young Hurler of the Year, alongside Jake Morris of Tipperary and Kilkenny's Owen Cody.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomás McCarthy on WLR.